Chapter 1. The Glass City. The rain had been falling for 3 days, and the city was still shimmering. Not with sunlight. There was none, but with the glow of wet glass, neon reflections trembling on every wall, every puddle. To walk through these streets was to walk through a mirror maze, never sure where the real ended and where the echo began. I stood at the corner of Rue Delacroix, coat heavy on my shoulders, collar pulled high. The smell of damp concrete lingered. Trams slid past, their windows fogged, filled with blurred silhouettes that looked less like people than passing ghosts. And all around, the sound, the endless patter of water, a heartbeat too fast, a rhythm that carried you whether you wanted or not. I had not come back here to remember. I had come back to find out why he died. Detective Moreau? The voice behind me was sharp, feminine, and impatient. I turned. A woman stood under a black umbrella, dressed in gray that looked more expensive than rain should allow. Her eyes carried the kind of focus people get when they've rehearsed their words all night. "Yes," I said. She hesitated a second, then extended her hand. "Elise Durant. You knew my brother." I took her hand briefly. Cold, precise fingers. "Etienne," I said. The name tasted bitter. He was a friend. She nodded once, as if confirming something she already suspected. "Then you also know the official report is nonsense." "I've read it. And it smells wrong." Her umbrella tilted just enough for me to see her face clearly. She had his eyes. Pale, restless. The kind of eyes that made you think of unfinished sentences. "I want you to find out what happened," she said. We ducked into a cafe to escape the rain, though the sound still drummed against the windows, relentless. The place was nearly empty. A boy wiped tables with a rag too dirty to be of any use. An old man in the corner nursed a glass of brandy like it was his last one on earth. Elise sat across from me, posture straight, gaze unflinching. She carried her grief like armor. I respected that. "They say he fell," she said. "That he slipped from the balcony. That it was late. That he was drunk. But Etienne never drank." I said nothing. She wanted contradiction. I had none. "He was writing something," she continued. "Notes, drafts, scattered papers. I searched his apartment. They're gone. You think someone took them? I know someone did." Her tone was steel. The waiter came. She ordered black coffee. I asked for the same. "Etienne mentioned you," she said, lowering her voice. "He said you understood the city better than most, that you knew where the cracks were." I allowed a thin smile. "The cracks aren't hard to find. The trick is knowing how deep they go." The coffee came bitter, thick, the kind that coats your tongue like ash. I drank it anyway. "Where do you want me to begin?" I asked. She leaned in. "Begin with the people he feared." The words hung between us like smoke. Etienne Durant had never been a fearful man. He was a journalist, not the polished kind you saw at banquets, shaking hands with ministers. He was the kind who scraped at walls until bricks came loose, the kind who didn't mind getting dirt under his fingernails if it meant pulling secrets out into the light. That kind of man doesn't fall from balconies by accident. I left the cafe an hour later. Elise remained, notebook open, already scribbling lines like someone building a fortress of words around herself. The rain had eased, but the city glistened as if it would never dry. I walked toward Etienne's apartment. Old habits came back, the rhythm of streets, the hidden corners where shadows watched. My shoes splashed through puddles, and the neon signs hummed above me, buzzing like insects on the edge of sleep. At Rue Montfleur I stopped. The building loomed tall, its balconies dripping rainwater, its bricks darkened like bruises. I climbed the stairs slowly, as if the walls might whisper something if I listened closely enough. The door to his apartment was sealed with a strip of official tape. I broke it. Inside, the air was stale, carrying a faint trace of ink and tobacco. The kind of smell a man leaves behind when his words weigh heavier than his silences. The rooms were neat. Too neat. No scattered papers, no overflowing ashtrays. A stage set after the play has ended. I walked to the balcony. The railing was low, metal slick with rain. Easy enough to fall if you leaned the wrong way. Too easy. I leaned over. Below, the street shimmered like liquid glass. And then I noticed it. A faint smear on the railing, dark, almost invisible against the wet metal. I touched it with my finger. It came away sticky. Not rust. Not rain. Blood. Behind me, a sound. A floorboard groaning where no one should be. I turned, slow. A shadow moved in the doorway. A figure stood there, still as a cutout, watching me. "You're not supposed to be here," the voice said. Low. Male. Unfamiliar. I didn't answer. I let silence do the work. The figure stepped closer. A flash of metal in his hand. Knife. Small. Sharp. Meant for close work. "I'm just looking," I said softly. "That's a mistake." He lunged. I sidestepped, the blade slicing air where my ribs had been a second ago. My shoulder caught his arm, twisting it back. The knife clattered to the floor, skidding across the tiles. We struggled, bodies colliding with furniture, chairs toppling, glass breaking. His breath was sour with panic. Mine was steady. I shoved him hard against the wall. His head struck plaster with a dull crack. For a moment he sagged, stunned. I grabbed his collar, slammed him again. "Who sent you?" I hissed. His eyes flickered. Fear. Calculation. Silence. I pressed harder. "Who?" But before he could speak, his body went limp. Not from me. From something sharper, final. A thin dart protruded from his neck, no bigger than a thorn. Poison. Instant. He collapsed at my feet. Dead. I froze. The silence of the room grew heavy. Then, faintly, from the building opposite, I saw it. A flicker of glass, the glint of a rifle scope vanishing into darkness. By the time I reached the balcony, there was nothing. Just rain, just neon, just the city swallowing its secrets. Behind me lay a dead man I never knew. And in his silence, a message sharper than words. Etienne Durand had been right to be afraid. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the apartment with the lights off, rain dripping outside, staring at the corpse until the authorities came. When they asked, I said little. A break-in, a fight, nothing more. But the truth clung to me. Someone was erasing. Etienne's notes, his voice, his witnesses, wiped clean. And now they had seen me. At dawn, the city seemed quieter, as if holding its breath. I walked the streets again, not toward home, but deeper in, toward places where answers rot in the gutters. Every step felt heavier. Every corner felt watched. In my pocket, my hand tightened around the small piece of paper I had pulled from the dead man's coat before the inspectors arrived. Only 3 words written on it, scrawled fast, almost desperate. The Glass City. I had no idea what it meant. But I knew this. Etienne had died for it. And unless I stopped now, I would too. Chapter 2. The Messenger. Morning broke in bruised colors. Gray sky, thin light, a city half asleep yet already restless. I had walked all night, letting the streets drag me where they pleased. By dawn, I ended up by the river. The water moved sluggishly, carrying oil stains and broken bottles. The bridges above looked skeletal, their iron frames wet and slick. I leaned on the railing, exhausted but steady, watching the current pull everything south. A gull circled, shrieking, then vanished into the fog. In my pocket, the note pressed against my palm. The Glass City. 3 words, nothing more. But they carried weight, like a stone in the gut. I turned them over in my head. A code, maybe. A place or a project. Etienne must have uncovered something buried. Something dangerous enough to kill for. And someone wanted me to stop asking questions. The city's rhythm shifted with daylight. Street markets unfolded their awnings, spilling out fruit, bread, cheap wine. Tram bells clanged. Shoes slapped against wet cobblestones. People hurried with umbrellas and briefcases. Faces blank, eyes down, as if everyone agreed not to look too closely at one another. That was always the city's trick, hiding rot under motion. If you never stopped moving, you never smelled the decay. I stopped moving. Detective. The voice caught me at the corner of Rue Blanche. A boy, no older than 15, thin as a reed. His clothes were patched, his shoes worn, but his eyes were sharp. Too sharp for his age. He handed me an envelope without a word. From who? I asked. The boy shook his head. Didn't say. Just paid me to give it to you. His voice was dry, cautious, as if he'd learned long ago not to trust favors. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single line, typed on cheap paper. If you want answers, come alone. Docks. Midnight. Warehouse 17. No signature. No mark. Just instructions. Who gave you this? I pressed. The boy hesitated. His eyes darted to the alley, then back at me. Tall man. Coat too clean for this part of town. Didn't look at me twice. And you didn't follow? Not stupid, sir. He said it with pride, but his hand trembled slightly as he shoved the few coins I gave him into his pocket. Then he vanished into the crowd, swallowed whole by the city. The docks. Midnight. Too obvious. Too theatrical. Which meant it was either a trap or someone desperate enough to risk one. I had 12 hours to find out. The day stretched, heavy and blurred. I searched for traces of Etienne, moving through bars, cafes, newsrooms, places where he used to haunt. His notebook always close, his voice always louder than the rest. But people had changed. Or maybe they only pretended not to know him. A bartender polished glasses too long when I asked. A clerk behind the newspaper counter suddenly remembered he had deliveries. A colleague from the editorial office met my gaze for half a second, then crossed the street. Fear leaves fingerprints, and they were everywhere. At dusk, I returned to my flat. A small room, bare walls, the smell of damp wood. I lit a cigarette and sat at the desk, staring at the note again. The Glass City. I whispered the words out loud. They felt wrong. Too clean for this place, too deliberate. Like a promise, or a threat. By nightfall, I knew I would go. Not because I trusted whoever sent the message, but because I had no other path left. The docks after dark were another country. Fog rolled in heavy, carrying the stench of salt, oil, and rust. The cranes stood like skeletal giants, motionless, their arms stretched toward nothing. Water lapped against rotting wood, steady and cold. Warehouse 17 loomed at the far end. Its windows were broken, its door half-hanging, the number painted in faded white. I stepped inside. Darkness swallowed me. Only faint light filtered through cracks in the roof. Rats scurried across the floor, squealing. Somewhere, water dripped, a metronome for the silence. Then, movement. You came. The voice echoed, calm male. A figure stepped out from the shadows. Tall, thin, wearing a coat that brushed his knees. His face was narrow, sharp, his eyes too alive. Who are you? I asked. He smiled faintly. A messenger. For who? For the ones who don't want you dead. Not yet. My hand hovered near my coat pocket. You're doing a poor job convincing me. He raised both hands. Empty. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to warn. I studied him. His movements were precise, deliberate, like someone used to being listened to. But his shoes betrayed him, muddy, uneven. He had walked far. He wasn't local. Speak, I said. The Glass City, he began, lowering his voice, is not a metaphor. It's a plan, a construction, something hidden beneath this one. Beneath. He nodded. Beneath the city, an entire structure of glass tunnels, chambers, networks, built in secret over years. Officially, it doesn't exist. But those who know use it. For what? His eyes flicked away. Control. I let the word sink. Control. Of people? Of trade? Of politics? He didn't answer, but his silence told me enough. And Etienne. I pressed. He found pieces. Names, routes, diagrams. He was close to finishing the puzzle. The messenger's tone tightened. Too close. I stepped closer. And who erased him? That, he whispered, is bigger than either of us. The air shifted. I felt it before I saw it. From the rafters above, a faint glimmer. Too late. Gunfire ripped through the silence. The messenger jerked backward, chest exploding in red. He collapsed at my feet, eyes wide, mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. I dove behind a crate. Wood splintered as bullets tore into it. Dust filled my lungs. I drew my revolver, steadying my breath, listening. Silence again. Then, footsteps retreating, fast, vanishing into the night. When I looked back, the messenger was gone. Not in body. He still lay there, face slack, coat soaked in blood. But whatever words he had left had vanished. I crouched, searching his pockets. Nothing. No ID, no papers. Only a key, small, silver, with a number etched into it. 47. I pocketed it. Outside, the fog thickened, smothering the docks. I walked back through it, every shadow a threat, every sound too sharp. The city had swallowed another witness, and left me one step closer to an answer I wasn't sure I wanted. By the time I returned to the streetlights, the key burned hot in my pocket. Warehouse 17 had given me nothing but a corpse. But keys always open something, and whatever waited behind the lock of 47, I knew it would not be safe. Chapter 3. The Key. The night didn't loosen its grip. Even as I walked back toward the heart of the city, the fog followed me like a shadow that refused to lift. Every street lamp glowed in halos. Every passerby blurred into a phantom. I lit a cigarette and let the smoke cut through the damp air. The key weighed against my palm. Small, ordinary, yet carrying the weight of the dead. Number 47. Keys are simple. They don't lie. They don't invent. They only wait. But the locks they fit, those tell stories. At dawn I reached my flat. The city was stirring, slow and gray, trams grinding awake, bakers stacking bread in their windows. I bolted the door behind me and sat at the desk. The key gleamed in the light, silver, scratched, marked only by that number. No emblem, no initials, just 47. I laid it on the table beside a map of the city. Banks, storage depots, old hotels, post offices. I ran through them all. Too many locks, too many doors. But keys like this had a look. A storage locker, maybe. A train station deposit box. Something meant to hold what you don't want found. And suddenly, I remembered Gare d'Estienne, Etienne Durant's station. His station. By midday, I was there. The terminal buzzed with noise, announcements echoing through high ceilings, the smell of metal and steam clinging to the air. People rushed past, clutching tickets, clutching lives. No one looked at anyone else. I moved slow, searching. The deposit boxes lined one wall, a row of silent mouths waiting to be fed. Rust clung to the hinges, numbers faded but still legible. 45, 46, and then 47. I glanced over my shoulder. No eyes on me. Not yet. The key slid in smooth. The lock clicked open with a soft finality. Inside, a leather folder. Thick, worn, bound with a strap. I pulled it free, shut the box, and walked away without hurry. Only when I was outside, sitting in the shadow of a tram stop, did I open it. Papers. Dozens. Typed sheets, handwritten notes, sketches. Etienne's handwriting, jagged and urgent. Words leapt out at me. The Glass City. Sublevel networks. Funding traced to Ministry of Development, disguised as Urban Renewal. Names: V. Lenore C. Dumas Marceau. And a phrase circled twice in ink, angry, as if shouted on the page. Not infrastructure. A prison. The air thickened as I read. Not tunnels for transport. Not chambers for trade. Glass walls, hidden beneath the streets. Transparent cages where silence could be locked away. Etienne hadn't stumbled onto corruption. He had uncovered architecture of control, and someone wanted to finish his story by burying it with him. Moreau. The voice was soft, too close. I looked up. Across the tram stop stood Elise Durant. No umbrella this time, rain dripping into her hair, eyes sharp as glass. She moved toward me, slow, deliberate. "You found something," she said. I closed the folder. "How did you know where I was?" "I didn't. I guessed." Etienne always left his truths in stations. He said trains carry secrets better than people do. Her gaze dropped to the folder. Her breath hitched. Is that his? Yes. Her hands trembled as she reached out. I didn't let go. Not here, I said. She nodded once, pressing her lips together, fighting whatever storm threatened to break. We walked together through the streets. I didn't speak. Neither did she. The weight of the folder pressed between us like a third presence, larger than either of us could carry. When we reached my flat, she finally broke the silence. Show me. I laid the folder open across the desk. Papers spread like a map of buried sins. Her eyes devoured them, moving fast, pausing only when a name or a phrase struck her. When she reached the words "not infrastructure," a prison, her mouth opened slightly. What does it mean? She whispered. It means the glass city isn't meant to serve people. It's meant to hold them. The room darkened as evening sank. Neither of us noticed. She leaned back, pale. He always said the city was alive, that it watched, that it listened. I thought it was only poetry. Sometimes poetry is the only language left for the truth. Her eyes met mine. Then what do we do? Before I could answer, the window shattered. Glass sprayed across the room like rain made of knives. I pulled Elise down as a bullet tore through the wall where her head had been. Silence broke into chaos. Another shot, then another. Wood splintered. Dust filled the air. I rolled, pulled my revolver, and fired back blind through the broken window. The street below echoed with footsteps retreating fast into the night. And then, all quiet. Elise's breath came sharp, rapid. She clutched my arm, trembling. They knew, she gasped. They always know. I scanned the street. Empty. Shadows only. But the message was clear. We weren't supposed to be alive. When I turned back, she was holding one page from the folder, her knuckles wide around it. Look, she whispered. I leaned close. The page held a crude sketch. Glass corridors spiraling downward, chambers branching out. In the corner, a name scrawled in haste. Project Helios. And beneath it, an address. Not far. Not safe. We have to go, she said. I shook my head. We have to be careful. She met my eyes with something fierce. Careful killed him. Careful will kill us too. Her voice carried the sharp edge of grief and fury, blended into something that could no longer be softened. I folded the paper, slid it into my pocket. She was right. We had the next step, and it would take us straight into the heart of the glass city. Chapter 4, Project Helios. The address burned in my pocket. One word, one name, one place, Helios. Etienne had circled it like a warning, or maybe like a dare. Elise sat across from me, her hair tangled with glass dust, her eyes lit by a fire I hadn't seen before. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not the same way. Fear had hardened into something sharper, something that would cut whoever stood in our way. We didn't talk much. Words had lost their use. We packed what little we needed: papers, cigarettes, a revolver, her silence. Then we left the flat behind, knowing we'd never walk back through that door again. The address led us toward the industrial edge of the city. No cafes here, no markets, only warehouses, skeleton factories, and roads cracked like broken bones. The rain followed as always, tapping iron roofs, dripping down our collars. We stopped at the corner of Rue Sorel. A gate stretched ahead, rusted but locked, wire coiled above it. Beyond stood a cluster of low buildings, their windows black, their walls scarred with graffiti. The sign on the gate was barely legible. Helios Glassworks. I felt Elise stiffen beside me. Glass, she whispered. It was always glass. We waited until night pressed down, then climbed the fence. The ground inside was soft with mud, our shoes sinking, our breaths white in the cold air. We moved in silence between the buildings, listening for footsteps, for the crack of rifles. None came. The main building loomed at the center. A tall, narrow structure with its windows shattered, its doors chained shut. But light leaked faintly from inside, a pale glow that made the shadows tremble. I cut the chain. The door groaned open. The air inside stank of chemicals and rust. The floor was littered with shards of broken glass, crunching under our steps. But the glow was real. It pulsed from the far end, a dim rhythm like a heartbeat. We followed it down a corridor. Old machines lined the walls, silent, covered in dust. Conveyor belts sagged, steel drums rusted through. This place had died years ago, but something still lived inside it. The glow grew brighter. We reached a set of stairs, iron steps leading down into the dark. Elise's voice was barely a breath. He was here. I nodded, and then we descended. The cellar opened into a chamber wider than the building above, and in the center stood something impossible. A wall of glass, perfect, seamless, tall as 3 men, stretching across the room like a frozen wave. Behind it, darkness. But within that darkness, shapes moved. Slow, distorted, impossible to make out. Elise pressed her hands to the glass. Her breath fogged it. What is this? I shook my head. Words failed. It wasn't a factory. It was an entrance. A sound broke the silence. The hiss of machinery. The low hum of power. Light flickered behind the wall. For an instant, the shapes sharpened. Rows of corridors, glowing faintly, vanishing into blackness. Then the light died again, leaving only our reflections staring back. And suddenly, footsteps. We turned. 2 men stepped out of the shadows, both in dark coats, both carrying pistols. They moved with precision, not thugs but trained hands. Put it down, one of them ordered, pointing at the folder clutched in my grip. Elise held her ground. Her jaw tightened, but her eyes didn't blink. You kill him, she said, and the city will still hear the truth. The man almost smiled. The city never hears what it's not meant to. He raised his pistol higher. I shifted my weight slow. My revolver was heavy at my side, hidden in the folds of my coat. 1 second too soon, and we'd both be dead. 1 second too late, and the trigger would pull. Then a voice from the stairwell cut the silence. Enough. We all froze. Another figure descended. Taller, broader, face calm, coat immaculate. His eyes carried authority. Not a soldier, not a thug. Someone who gave orders, not followed them. The 2 men stepped back immediately. The newcomer's gaze swept across us, cold, patient, almost curious. Then he spoke my name. Moreau. My pulse hammered. I had never seen him before. But he knew me. Elise's breath caught beside me. The man smiled thinly. You've been busy. Too busy. His eyes flicked toward the glass wall. Curious, isn't it? The way truth hides in plain sight. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. And then he whispered, just loud enough for us to hear. You shouldn't have come here. Helios isn't finished, but it's already hungry. The glass wall behind us shuddered. A crack of light burst through its surface. And in that light, the shadows inside began to move faster, rising, swarming, pressing against the glass as if trying to escape. Elise grabbed my arm, her nails biting deep. What is that? The man only smiled. The wall trembled again, lines of light crawling across it like veins of fire. And then, with a sound like ice breaking on a river, the glass began to split. Chapter 5, The Fracture. The glass screamed. Not like stone, not like steel. Glass has its own voice when it breaks. A long, high-pitched cry that stabs through bone. The wall split in a jagged vein from ceiling to floor. Light bled from the crack, pale and unnatural, painting the chamber in white fire. Behind the fracture, shadows writhed. Shapes of men, or maybe not men at all. Elise pulled back. I didn't. Some truths are clearer when you don't flinch. The man in the immaculate coat did not move. He watched the fracture with calm eyes, as if he'd been waiting years for this moment. His men shifted, uncertain, guns raised but hands trembling. You see it now, the man said softly. Etienne saw it too. He wasn't strong enough to bear it. Bear what? I asked. The city beneath the city. The cage beneath the streets. What you call prison. What we call order. The glass shuddered again. A hairline crack spread outward, splintering like a spiderweb. Through the widening gap, I glimpsed more. Corridors stretching into dark infinity, walls glowing faintly, transparent, enclosing countless chambers. And inside those chambers, faces, pale, silent, pressed against the glass, eyes wide and unblinking. Elise gasped, stumbling backward. Dear God, they're people. The man didn't look away. Not people. Citizens. Dangerous, unstable, uncontrollable. We keep them safe. We keep you safe. I shook my head. You built a graveyard out of glass. His smile was faint, almost sad. The world needs boundaries. Without them, it devours itself. The crack widened further. Dust rained from the ceiling. The hum of power grew louder, deeper, vibrating through the floor. One of his men stepped forward nervously. Sir, we should. The man silenced him with a glance. His calm never wavered. This place isn't ready, he admitted. But sometimes the truth doesn't wait for readiness. He turned to me. You wanted answers, Moreau. Here they are. The glass city is real, and it has already begun to feed. Suddenly, the fracture burst wide. A section of the wall collapsed outward, shards exploding across the chamber like crystal knives. We dropped to the floor, shielding our faces. When the dust cleared, the wall was gone. And beyond it, the corridor yawned open like a throat. The figures inside stepped forward. They were human, yes, but wrong. Skin pale as frost, eyes glassy, movements slow and jerky, as if pulled on strings. Their lips moved, but no sound came. Their hands reached blindly, searching. One pressed its face close to me, separated only by air now. Its expression was blank, emptied of will. Not prisoners. Not exactly. Something hollowed them out. Elise whispered, voice trembling. They're alive. Yes, the man in the coat said calmly. Alive. Contained. Broken free too soon. The hollow figures shuffled forward. The guards panicked. One fired. The shot cracked loud, echoing. A pale body staggered back, glass dust spraying from its skin like sparks. It didn't fall. More emerged, silent, endless, filling the corridor, spilling into the chamber. Chaos broke. The guards shouted, firing wildly. Bullets shattered glass fragments, ricocheted off walls. The pale figures advanced without pause, arms outstretched, eyes empty. Elise clutched my arm. We have to go. The man in the coat didn't move. His eyes burned with cold fascination. This, he whispered, is only the beginning. I pulled Elise toward the stairs. The guards' gunfire echoed behind us, drowned by the eerie silence of the pale figures pressing forward. The hum of power surged, shaking the floor, rattling the pipes. We stumbled up the stairs, glass crunching underfoot. At the top, the night air hit like a whip, cold, wet, alive. Behind us, from the depths of the warehouse, the sound followed. Not footsteps, not gunfire, but the steady, endless sound of glass shattering. We ran, through the mud, past the rusted cranes, over the fence. The rain fell harder, beating the world into fragments of reflection. At last we collapsed under the shadow of a bridge, lungs burning, clothes soaked. Elise pressed her head to her knees. Her voice shook. They were people, Moreau. People. Yes. And he, whoever he was, he called it order. I lit a cigarette with shaking hands. The flame flickered weak against the rain. Order built on silence, I said. Order built on fear. We sat there, breathing, listening to the river drag itself past. But the silence didn't last long. From the streets above came the echo of sirens. Not police. Not rescue. Too fast. Too many. Elise's eyes lifted to mine. They're coming for us. I exhaled smoke into the dark, my pulse steadying. Then we run toward them. I said, not away. Her eyes widened. Why? Because the only way through this city, I crushed the cigarette under my heel, is deeper in. Above us, the sirens grew louder. And from the direction of the Helios warehouse came another sound, low, unnatural, carrying through the rain. A chorus of glass voices, crying. Chapter 6. The Hunt. The sirens circled the city like wolves. Not police sirens, something sharper, quicker. Short bursts that rose and fell with military precision. Whoever they weren't here to ask questions. Elise and I stayed under the bridge until the sound swelled too close. Boots thundered above, heavy and coordinated. The streets shook with their rhythm. She grabbed my arm. "We can't stay." "No," I said. "We can't." We ran along the riverbank, shoes slipping on wet stone. The night air reeked of oil and rain. The water beside us dragged slow, swallowing debris. Behind, voices shouted. Orders barked. Flashlights cut across the darkness. They weren't searching. They were chasing. We cut into a side alley, narrow, walls sweating with damp. Rats scattered in front of us, squealing. The alley bent twice, then opened into a small square lit by a single failing lamp. Elise bent over, breath ragged. "Who are they?" "Not police," I said. "Not army either. Private." She straightened, anger rising through her exhaustion. "Private for who?" I didn't answer, because we both knew. The sound of boots rolled closer. I pulled her toward a boarded doorway, kicked it in. We slipped inside as the square filled with light. From the crack between boards, I saw them. A squad of 6. Dark coats, rifles slung, visors hiding their faces. They moved like one body, sweeping the square, signals sharp and silent. One of them knelt, touching the ground where our footsteps ended. He lifted his head, gestured. They knew. We climbed the stairs of the ruined building, steps groaning under our weight. At the top, a window opened onto the rooftops. I pushed Elise through first, then followed. The rain hit harder up here, wind tearing at our coats. The city stretched endless, chimneys, antennae, cathedral spires piercing the fog. Below, the squad entered the building. Elise's hand gripped mine. "Now what?" I scanned the roofs. A path stretched across, broken but possible. We run. We leapt from one roof to the next, tiles shattering underfoot. Behind, shouts. Shots cracked, bullets sparking off brick. Elise stumbled, but I pulled her up, dragging her forward. Wind tore her hair across her face, her breath sharp with fear. Still, she didn't stop. The rooftops narrowed. Ahead, a gap too wide. The street yawned below, a black pit. "They'll catch us," she gasped. "Not if we don't give them the chance." I took her hand and ran faster. At the edge, we jumped. For a heartbeat, nothing existed but rain and air. Then our feet slammed the opposite roof. Tiles cracked, slid, fell into the dark. We rolled, coughing alive. Behind us, the squad reached the edge. One tried to leap. He didn't make it. His body vanished into the street with a dull, final sound. The others hesitated. It bought us seconds. Seconds were enough. We dropped from the rooftops into another alley, slipping through shadows, weaving through back streets until the chase dulled behind us. At last, under the cover of an abandoned tram shed, we stopped. Elise sank against a pillar, shivering. Her eyes were wild, her breath uneven. "They'll never stop." "No," I said. "They won't." The rain drummed the iron roof. In the distance, the sirens still prowled. The city was awake now, restless. Watching, I unrolled the folder again. The pages were damp but legible. Etienne's words stared back. Project Helios. Not infrastructure. A prison. And below, one address circled twice. Different from the glassworks. The ministry. Elise leaned closer, voice low, hoarse. "If this is real, if they've built prisons under our feet, then the ministry knows. They ordered it." "Yes." She closed her eyes. "Then that's where we go." Her certainty struck me. No hesitation, no doubt. She had lost a brother, gained a truth, and now she carried it like a blade. I envied her clarity. But I had learned something long ago. The deeper you dig, the darker it gets. And the darkness doesn't always let you walk back out. The tram shed filled with silence. The rain slowed to a drizzle. I lit another cigarette, the flame tiny in the vast dark. Elise's voice broke it. What if the glass city isn't finished? I blew smoke into the shadows. Then we're already too late. She looked at me, eyes steady, unblinking. And what if it is finished? The question hung there, heavier than the night. From far off, carried on the wet wind, came a sound. Not boots, not sirens. Glass, breaking, again and again, spreading. I met Elise's eyes. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to, because the glass city wasn't just beneath us anymore. It was moving. Chapter 7, The Ministry. Morning came without light. The sky was a sheet of ash, heavy low. The city looked tired, as though it had spent the night fighting itself. Elise and I walked through streets that smelled of wet stone and smoke. Every corner felt watched. Every passerby looked away too quickly. People had learned to survive by pretending not to see. We didn't pretend. We walked straight into the lion's den. The ministry rose at the heart of the city, an immense building of pale stone, its facade carved with columns, its windows dark as blind eyes. It was the kind of architecture that screamed permanence, power, inevitability. Elise stared up at it. Her jaw tightened. "They built this with our money," she whispered. "And underneath, they built cages." I nodded. That's how power works. It takes the roof and the basement too. We climbed the marble steps. Guards stood at the doors, rifles slung, eyes blank. But we didn't stop. Inside, the air was colder. Colder than the rain outside. The lobby was vast, echoing, lined with flags. Our footsteps rang too loud. A clerk looked up from behind a desk, her face powdered, expression polished into neutrality. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice practiced. "Yes," I said. "We have an appointment." She frowned. "With whom?" I leaned closer. "With the truth." Her smile cracked. For a second, something slipped in her eyes, fear, recognition. Then the mask returned. "I don't know what you mean." Elise stepped forward, slamming the folder down on the desk. Papers spilled. Words like knives, Helios, glass city, prison. The clerk froze. For a heartbeat, silence. Then, the sound of boots. They came fast. For guards, rifles raised, uniforms immaculate. No questions, no hesitation. Hands where we can see them, one barked. Elise's eyes darted to mine. Running wasn't an option. Not here. Not now. I raised my hand slowly. "So this is how the ministry greets its citizens." The guard didn't blink. "You're coming with us." They led us down corridors that swallowed sound. Marble floors, high ceilings, doors too heavy, too many locks. The ministry was a maze, built to disorient, to erase direction. Elise walked beside me, shoulders square, chin high. Not afraid. Not anymore. Finally, we reached a set of double doors. The guard opened them. Inside, an office. Large, sterile, lined with books no one read. And behind the desk sat a man I had seen once before. The immaculate coat. The calm eyes. The one who had spoken at the glassworks. He smiled thinly. "Detective Moreau. Mademoiselle Durant. Welcome." Elise's voice cut sharp. "You murdered my brother." His expression didn't change. "Your brother was reckless. He dug too deep. Curiosity is not always a virtue." I stepped forward. "And you? What are you? Minister? Architect? Warden?" He folded his hands. "I am a servant. To order. To necessity." "The glass city isn't necessity," I said. "It's a tomb." His gaze flickered, almost amused. "Words. Always words. You should see it for what it is, salvation. The weak contained, the strong protected. A city cleansed of chaos." Elise's hands trembled, not with fear, but with fury. "You call that salvation? I call it hell." The man rose from his chair, slow, deliberate. He moved closer, stopping only a breath away. His voice lowered, intimate, sharp. "You think you're exposing something hidden. You're wrong. We are not hiding. We are building. And soon, when the fracture's close, when the system is sealed, this city will not resist. It will kneel." His words carried no heat, no madness, only certainty. That made them more dangerous. I leaned closer, matching his calm. If you're not hiding, why chase us? Why silence Etienne? Why send killers into the rain? For the first time, his smile faltered. Because he knew I was right. He turned away, brushing invisible dust from his sleeve. Because not everyone is ready to see the future. Some truths need transition. He glanced back, and some voices must be removed. He gestured. The guards raised their rifles. Elise's breath caught. I shifted, searching for any weakness, any opening. Then, the building shook. A low, distant rumble. Not thunder. Not machinery. The glass voices. They were here. The man's eyes narrowed. His calm cracked for the first time. He hissed through clenched teeth. Not now? Not yet. Another rumble. Louder. A crack spread across one wall of the office, faint but real. Elise whispered, her voice barely audible. They've broken through. The guards panicked. One shouted into a radio. Another pulled the desk aside, revealing a steel hatch in the floor. The man in the immaculate coat barked an order. Secure the ministry. Seal the lower levels. But his eyes flicked to us, cold, sharp, calculating. And I saw it. He was more afraid of us than of the glass-born breaking in. The hatch opened. Light spilled from below. The guards moved to push us forward. Elise clutched my hand. Her whisper was hot against my ear. If we go down there, we don't come back. The rifles pressed harder. The hatch gaped wider. And from the walls around us, the sound of cracking glass grew louder. We were trapped, between the ministry above and the glass city rising below. Chapter 8. Beneath the ministry. The hatch yawned open like a wound. Cold air rose from it, carrying a scent of metal, mildew, and something sharper, ozone, as if lightning had once struck and never left. The guards shoved us forward. Their rifles were steady, but their eyes betrayed them. They were afraid too, afraid of what waited below. Elise's nails dug into my palm. She whispered fast, urgent. Don't let them take us down there. Don't. But the rifles pressed harder. And there are moments in life when the choice isn't whether to go, but how to fall. We fell. A narrow stairwell spiraled down. Concrete walls slick with condensation. Every step rang hollow, swallowed by the depths. The guards followed close, boots hammering. Above, the hatch slammed shut. The sound echoed like a verdict. At the bottom, a corridor stretched long and straight. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, too bright, too sterile. Doors lined the walls. Heavy steel doors with no handles. Behind them, faint thuds, scratches, breathing. Elise flinched with each sound. They're in there, she whispered. Trapped. Yes, I said. And waiting. At the far end stood another set of doors. Enormous. Reinforced. The guards unlocked them, movements quick, nervous. Inside lay a chamber too vast to belong under any city. A cathedral of glass and steel. Rows upon rows of transparent cells stretched into the distance. Each held a figure, silent, unmoving, lit from within by a pale glow. Men, women, children. Faces slack, eyes glazed, pressed against the walls. It was the glass city. Not myth, not metaphor. Reality, alive and endless. Elise's voice broke. God help us. The man in the immaculate coat. He had followed, descending behind us with slow, deliberate steps, spread his arms, as though unveiling a masterpiece. Here it is, he said softly. The future. Containment. Order. No hunger, no riot, no madness. Just stillness. Just peace. I stared at the endless cages. This isn't peace. It's paralysis. He turned to me, eyes burning with calm certainty. Call it what you wish. But it works. These people were dangerous. Sick. Fragile. Now they harm no one. And the city above survives. Elise shook her head violently. You turn them into ghosts. Ghosts are easier to govern, he said.